Meeting to order. I want to give you guys just a little quick roadmap of where we're going. We have a number of bills that we're going to hear and likely take action on today. And then we have, at the end, I guess the headlining event that a lot of you are probably here for would be the truck weight hearing. We're going to do a different kind of hearing today. And what we're not going to do is a 5.5 hour hearing. Because A, we don't have a 5.5 hours, and B, they're boring and nobody pays attention. So what I want to test drive is a different style of conversation, almost a point counterpoint, where we get to drive topically from here and kind of present a couple of different topics and give each side, if you will, 2 to 3 minutes to talk about each of those, give the committee an opportunity to ask questions, and then we're going to move on. This is not a bill that we're going to vote on today, so at a future date, we'll have an opportunity for those that want to speak on the bill to speak on the bill. My hope would be that, first of all, it's far more engaging for the committee, and that the committee's not on their cell phones the whole time, but that they're engaged knowing that we're going to kind of get quick, relevant information. And if I see some of you guys have given us information, that's great. We can all go home and read a PowerPoint, and we can all go home and read a deck. So rather than have the hearing process be the reading of PowerPoints to us, I'm hoping that we get something that's a lot more engaging and interesting and really distills down the issue as much as possible, unless the committee asks questions they have. Because if the committee's schedule has been half like what my schedule has been, we're all well aware of the issue. We're all well aware of the talking points on each side, so I think we'll welcome the opportunity to kind of flesh some of that out in a more of a dialogue format. So with that being said, our first item of business here is Senate Bill 196, and this is still a bill that is alive, and I will entertain the will of the committee. And I recognize Senator Dixon.
Would like to make a motion, move to pass.
We have a move to pass. We have a second.
I have an amendment.
And I'm going to recognize Senator Beach on number 11 for an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, I voted against this the other day, and I had a concern with rideshare. And so I've asked to add an amendment to this. I'll read the amendment, adding paragraph 2 in subsection C at line 65 to say, a passenger in a vehicle during a trip requested through a rideshare network service, transportation referral service, or limousine carrier, as those terms are defined in Code Section 40-1-90. This amendment basically, Mr. Chairman, it will keep the law as status quo for all third-party driving services in the state. Not wearing a seatbelt while in a rideshare will not be used as any evidence against the rider in the vehicle. That would pertain to that, or buses coming from the airport, or any of those type of services, rideshare services. So really, finally, this bill just balances consumer protection with fundamental fairness and, I believe, good public policy. And I would ask your support for this amendment so that I can vote for this bill.
We have a motion to amend. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Chairman Beach, just to clarify what you're doing, you're adding essentially passengers in a ride share to the list of items where this bill essentially will not apply. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Great. We have a motion. We have a motion to amend. Do we have any discussion? All right, we'll take a vote first on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those opposed, like sign. Senator, you got to vote. Are you a yay or a nay? You're a nay?
I'm for it.
You're for it. All right. Then the motion passes unanimously. The amendment, excuse me, passes unanimously. We'll now take up the original motion, which is a motion do pass. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. 6 yeas. All those opposed, same sign. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion carries 6-5. Now moving on to Senate Resolution 45, which has been nested together like our road naming bills often are with Senate Resolution 94. I'm going to recognize first Senator Anna Vitarte, if you'll step forward. Actually, Senator Hickman, why don't you join your good friend at the desk here. We'll have each of you take about 30 seconds to tell us about these folks who you believe are worthy of having a road named after them. Senator Hickman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Resolution 45. 2 seconds real quick. I do want to recognize the chairman of my home county, Paulding County, David Carmichael, for being here. David, thank you. Senate Resolution 45 honors the life of Deputy Marshal Samuel Irvin Jr. From Paulding County, who served in the Cobb County Sheriff's Office since 2012 and was tragically assassinated on September 8, 2022, leaving its family behind. This honor to recognize this incredible human being would be renaming Highway 92 Hiram Ackworth Highway in East Paulding Drive in Paulding County, Georgia, as the Deputy Marshal Samuel Irvin Jr. Memorial Intersection, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for Senator Anavitarte? Seeing none, Senator Hickman, if you do the same thing, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to be here. This is the road naming for Mr. E. Raven Anderson in Bullock County. I know Mr. Anderson very, very well. He will be inducted in the Georgia Agricultural Hall of Fame in March. He was Humanitarian of the Year in our community a couple of years ago. He former Business Leader of the Year in our community, and probably the greatest thing that Mr. Anderson did for our community was he was chairman of the county commissioners at the time and put in land use planning, which has been a life changer and life saver for our community. The road that we're asking to be renamed is on State Route 46 from Highway 301 South to State Route 67, and to be dedicated as the E. Raven Anderson Highway.
Thank you, Chairman Hickman. Any questions for the chairman? Senator Moore.
Senator Hickman, are there two Highway 301s in the state of Georgia?
Not State Highway, not, this is US Highway 301.
Oh, U.S. Highway.
I'm sorry, US Highway 301.
I'd just like to make a comment, Mr. Chairman. I served with Mr. Anderson on the DOT board,
Oh, wow.
and he's a great man and very well deserved to have a road named after him.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Chairman Beach. Chairman Dixon.
At the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
This would be the appropriate time. Thank you. We have a motion due pass. Do we have a second? Second by Senator McLaurin. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Senator Anavitarte, you can vote as well. Senator Lucas, love your vote on this one. Either way. And I believe that passes unanimously.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Senator Anavitarte, you can stay there, as Senate Bill 203 is the next on our list.
I think this is the bill the whole crowd's here to see, right? All right.
I believe you're mistaken, sir.
Maybe. We'll see. All right. So Senate Bill 203. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This bill is known as the Trucking Opportunity Act of 2023. Mr. Chairman, we have a supply chain crisis in this country, and everywhere you look, grocery store shelves are either empty, the choices are limited, or the inventory is low. While much of the chain crisis is a result of lack of leadership in the U.S. Department of Transportation at the White House, there are things we can do here in Georgia to lessen the pain of businesses and consumers. The most important thing we can do is fix our supply chain, is to create incentives to encourage more truck drivers. The American Trucking Association estimates that America needs more than 80,000 more truck drivers, a number that could balloon to 160,000 by the year 2030. The American Trucking Association also estimates that over the next 10 years, the industry will have to recruit nearly 1.2 million new drivers into the industry to replace retiring drivers that otherwise leave the industry, and additional drivers needed as a result of growth. Addressing the shortage of truck drivers is exactly what this bill I present today in committee does. First, the Trucking Opportunity Act of 2023 repeals Georgia's direct action statutes, will allow personal injury attorneys to sue insurance companies at the same time they sue motor carriers. Direct action lawsuits lead to higher settlements, frivolous claims, which can put motor carriers out of business, driving up the cost of transporting goods, and creating a new lawsuit tax that ultimately is paid by the consumers we represent in our districts. Just a handful of states have direct action statutes. But the last thing the economy needs is trial lawyers making money on the backs of blue-collar truckers forced by the higher insurance premiums and settlements while making goods on the goods that we buy make them more expensive. Second, this legislation codifies hours of service variance that is allowed under federal regulation. I'll cite it, 49 CFR 350.341 E1 and E2. This hours of service variance was granted by the Department of Public Safety in 2014 via an administrative order. The variance has subsequently been extended on a temporary basis several times. The Department of Public Safety has monitored whether the variance has caused any potential safety or enforcement issues in the field, and over the last couple of years, no significant incidents while the variance has been in effect has been found. This variance directly affects the income of trucking industry employees who earn an hourly wage. Making the truck driving industry more attractive to drivers require us to evaluate regulations that artificially limit how much an worker can earn. Additionally, this variance is essential to the timely delivery of concrete and other construction materials in all of our districts across the state, critical to infrastructure development. As Congress spends billions of dollars in infrastructure improvements, our construction industries need reliable supply chains to ensure the timely completion of projects. Finally, you'll see a section in the bill that talks about free tuition for veterans who are trained in the technical college system of Georgia, as they transfer out of military life, active duty life. For many of you senators, you're probably very well aware, my dad served in Vietnam. He was a Purple Heart recipient. He was a mechanic in the Army overseas and here, and spent his entire life, over 25, 30 years, working in the trucking industry, keeping trucks on the road. And if there's one thing that we can do is we try to help our veterans and move veterans back into the life of earning a living and making money to put food on the table and support their families, is to give them a good job. And many of them do want to work in the trucking industry, but sometimes it's just becoming so unaffordable for them to receive training that we put this provision in the bill. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Chairman Avatarte. Senator McLaurin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. On the direct action piece of it, if we were to amend right now in committee to limit the direct action to cases where it was impractical to effect service on an insured party, would you be amenable to accepting that amendment in exchange for support on the bill?
I think at the end of the day, I would like to see the section removed. I mean, I think at the end of the day, we got folks, and no offense to my attorney friends, that work off commissions, and the families I represent in my district and across the state, like my dad, live on a pretty strict budget, and they got to live by that every single day. So we can either help them make a life of their own, or we can continue to pay out commissions, which basically impacts the citizens I represent in my district.
Okay, that's a categorical position. Understood. I'm still going to make the amendment. We'll see how it goes. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Chairman Beach.
Yes, I really like the part where we're going to have tuition free for the veterans. Do you have a plan or a PR plan to get that out? I mean, we passed this bill and it sits, I mean, how are the veterans going to know about this? Do you have a game plan to get this out so that we can recruit veterans and get them into the trucking industry, an industry that we really do have a shortage of?
Thank you, Senator Beach, for the question. I've talked to my technical college president in Paulding County, I think we are the largest technical college in the state. And I think as we develop more programs, as we've seen in Middle Georgia, the Vector program, and we've seen it now created in Cobb County and Marietta, there is a need to have more of these Vector centers across the state, which I know Governor Kemp has been passionate about, and many of our leaders, including some in this room. Whether it's finding a job or healthcare, I think we got to do more than what the VA is doing, and we can have the VA conversation in another committee meeting. But I think just from word of mouth, and also the trucking company owners are going to private sources, paying all this money to basically see people they train, stick around for 24, 48 hours. They won't stay on the job. They can't drive a truck because they're not being trained properly. And I believe that our technical college system does a phenomenal job. And if we would make the investments, I think, at the more CDL testing sites, these veterans would come to work and be trained, and we can hire them all across the state to improve our supply chain crisis we have right now. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Chairman Beach. Any other questions? Senator Lucas.
What kind of money we talking about? Is a fiscal note with this?
Senator, I do not have a fiscal note. We do know it's roughly $2,260 per veteran that wants to get a CDL license. But in my opinion, and I know I'm biased because my dad was in the Army and served in Vietnam and was shot at and everything else, that's money worth spent, especially if we're going to help somebody support their family and be a contributing member of the Georgia economy.
Senator McLaurin.
I mean, we
That's a great
we passed
Fair.
the bill. We need to know what kind of money we're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Senator McLaurin.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move an amendment at the appropriate time.
We will do that after we hear from two gentlemen who would like to speak. One is speaking in opposition, Senator Anna Vitarte, if you don't mind stepping back up
Yes,
here
sir.
for just 1 second. And then Buck Rogers, I'm not sure if you're for or against, it's not marked here. So Steve, and I apologize, I can't read your last name, but from Road Safe America, if you'll step forward. That's an O?
It is an O. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Steve Owings, co-founder of Road Safe America, a nonprofit that works on truck safety, or the lack thereof, in this country. I want to share a couple of facts first. Georgia is among, and has been for quite some time, the 5 states with the most fatalities in crashes involving big trucks.
Mr. Owens, I regret interrupting you here, but I'm just going to let you know I'm going to give each speaker 2 minutes just so you can craft your comments with that in mind. Thank you.
Okay. My son was killed trying to get back to college his senior year. Came to stop traffic. It was a Sunday after Thanksgiving. It's usually a very busy traffic day. Tragically, the vehicle behind him was a fully loaded tractor-trailer truck. It didn't stop in time. It ran into a parking lot situation. And the fallout of that, we found out inexcusable circumstances in which large trucks conduct business on public thoroughfares in close proximity at high speeds right next to your family and mine. We've worked with the trucking industry for decades to improve that situation. And one of the things I've done has been on the Congressional Advisory Committee to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. I've chaired it for 2 years. I've heard numerous presentations from experts on fatigue. There are very good reasons that the average work week is 40 hours and the average work day is 8. Lack of attention goes up exponentially after those time frames on a daily basis. The federal rules limit driving to 11 hours per day and 14 hours working. That is a very long day. It is absolutely a step in the opposite direction for Georgia for us to increase that. Even with the federal rules, 13% of the crashes in this country that involve a fatality involve fatigue. And 2/3 of our truck drivers admit that they've been drowsy driving a truck. Please
seconds.
don't move in this direction.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers?
Buck Rogers here on behalf of the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association and a CDL license holder. I'm here on the issue of repealing the direct action statute. It's been around since 1930. I'm not aware of any statistics that support some sort of tort tax or increased verdicts based on it. It enables the victims to go and sue the insurer directly or join them in a suit with the defendant trucking company. It provides a means by which to actually insulate the trucking company so they can keep doing their business and go after the insurance company directly. And I would suggest that in situations like auto wreck cases where we don't have a direct action, you have circumstances where an insurer is not doing their job protecting their insured, the mom and pop trucking companies. And if we get rid of this direct action, we're going to have mom and pop trucking companies dealing with this stuff and not having their insurance companies deal with it directly. This is a means by which to cut that out and make it more efficient. And if we get rid of it and we have these mom and pops having to try to figure out how to get this to the insurance company and protect their rights, we may inadvertently run those people out of business, and I don't think that's what this committee wants to do.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Appreciate both of you. I did get a note here. We have a late arriving request to speak from a Nathan Goolsby. If you'll step forward, please. And you'll be on the same clock these gentlemen were once you start speaking.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee, and thank you, Senator Anna Vitarte, for being leading this bill and the efforts that you put forth. We really do appreciate on behalf of the trucking industry. My name is Nathan Goolsby, and I represent the Georgia Motor Trucking Association. We're the largest trucking association in the state, representing every facet of the trucking industry, including private and for-hire carriers, as well as the companies that provide service and products to these trucks. We support this bill. We think it's a pro-business bill. As you know, we're woefully short on drivers. And we support any effort to promote veterans and their entry into the trucking industry. It can be costly to obtain a CDL, depending on whether you receive it at a technical school or at a private company. And the ability to waive the tuition fees for these veterans, I think, is very beneficial to them, as well as being beneficial to the trucking industry. I know this committee has heard testimony on repealing the direct action statutes here in Georgia, so I don't want to belabor the point, but Georgia is one of 4 states in the country that allows you to sue both the trucking company and their insurance company at the same time. The jury is going to be more likely to award a higher settlement once they see the insurance company that is already named as a defendant. So it's time for this to change, and we're not looking for money, we're not looking for handouts, we just simply want a level playing field that's in line with every other industry in the state of Georgia. And lastly, we promote the ability for a carrier and an employer here in Georgia to be able to hire a truck driver if the federal government has already assessed that they are worthy of being able to obtain a CDL. If they have a valid CDL and the federal government has assessed that, we don't believe that a trucking company here in Georgia should be required to go through any additional hurdles or hoops to hire a driver. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goolsby. We go ahead and recognize Senator McLaurin for his aforementioned amendment.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The amendment proceeds as follows. I would reverse the strike on lines 28 to 30 of the bill. And I would strike the period at the end of line 30, put in a comma, and then I'd put this text after the comma, only if service on any party insured by the carrier is impractical after reasonable efforts to effect timely service. And that's the amendment.
I didn't, second for Senator Mello. Sorry, I missed that. Okay, so Senators, I understand what you're saying. You're basically saying that you cannot immediately name the insurance company in a suit. You can only do so after a reasonable time if the person's left the state or was not otherwise available to be served.
This is a compromise position, Mr. Chairman, because it would move the current law back from the present state, which is that you can go directly to the insurer under every circumstance, and it would keep that possibility, but only in the situation where one of the parties insured by the carrier couldn't be served. And we heard some testimony about how one of the reasons why we have the direct action statute is because sometimes it's difficult to effect service on all parties, and so this would remain as a safety valve only. Again, it's a compromise position.
Thank you, Senator. We're in discussion at this point. Senator Anna Vitarte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, just communicate to this committee, I'm not in favor of the amendment. Respectfully to my friend from across the way here.
Thank you, Chairman. Any other discussion? And I recognize I was completely out of order on doing all of that. So we're going to first take up a motion on the underlying bill. I'll then allow you to restate your motion to amend, and then we'll take action on both of those. I recognize Senator Gooch. Leader Gooch.
Motion do pass Senate Bill 203, LC number 393761.
We have a motion due pass and a second. I'll recognize Senator McLaurin for a motion to amend.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll restate very briefly. Reverse strike on lines 28 through 30, strike period at the end of 30, comma, only if service on any party insured by the carrier is impractical after reasonable efforts to effect timely service. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second from Senator Mallow. Any discussion on this amendment? Senator Mallow, what number are you on? 3?
This just allows for a person who, when service cannot be perfected, they are on the clock of the statute of limitations. And so until service can be perfected, you cannot bring the suit if a person cannot be served, and you time out that person's suit on their damage. So we simply want to allow folks to have the opportunity to bring that suit and its timeliness. And if someone could not be served, the service could not be perfected, this amendment would allow for them to name that additional insurer.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not an attorney, but how would this amendment affect, we just passed a direct action bill a couple days ago. Would that have any effect on that, what we just passed?
If they both pass into law, they would be in conflict with each other.
Yes, there would be a conflict, correct? Okay.
I would lobby the governor to sign this one later.
All right, we have an amendment. We're going to vote on this amendment first, and there's an additional amendment forthcoming. All those in favor of the amendment as stated by Senator McLaurin, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4 yeas. All those opposed, like sign. The amendment fails. I'm going to recognize Senator Moore for an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to eliminate Section 3 and Section 5 as it relates to direct action. And I mean, I have all due respect for my friend, Senator Ana Vitarde. We both come from similar backgrounds in transportation. My father, too, is an Army veteran, drove a truck in the Army, built bridges, blew bridges up, owned a trucking company after that. And I talked to him. We talked about mom and pop shops. Well, he's my pop. And, the small trucking companies are very concerned about big trial lawyers. They see those billboards when they go up and down the highway. And when they purchase insurance, they assume that insurance by our state law now is going to have their back, right? That's the direct action part. But what small trucking companies in Northwest Georgia I talk to are concerned about is if we eliminate direct action, then they're going to be fighting not only the big bad billboard trial attorneys, but also the big bad insurance company who has a lot more resources and a lot more attorneys and is doing everything in their power not to pay out on that claim. So
That's your motion, Senator. Is there
yes.
a second? Second for Senator McLaurin. Now we're in discussion. Senator Ana Vitarde.
So, Mr. Chairman, I respectfully will disagree from my friend north of me from Northwest Georgia that basically his amendment will impact negatively small trucking company owners, individual operators across the state, again, who are trying to make a living. If the senator wants to partner up and get rid of trial lawyer billboards across the state, we can have that conversation too, because it may help them, some of these truck drivers not be taken advantage of. But I think that's a separate bill, but respectfully disagree and ask the committee to vote this amendment down.
Thank you, Senator. I see no other lights. I'm going to go ahead and call the question. All those in favor of the amendment by Senator Moore, please signify by raising your hand. 4 yeas. All those opposed, like sign. 7 nays. Motion fails. We're now on to the original motion of due pass. All those in favor, Senator Ginn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd ask the bill offer to explain to me where in Section 3 and in Section 5, that where those provisions are struck, then what does removing Section 3 and Section 5 do? Because where it's talking about, changing those things, that's already struck out of the bill.
Restores the language.
We got to remove both those sections and restore the language back.
Okay.
But we've moved on past that. We're now, that motion failed. We're now on the original bill. I'm going to go ahead and call the yeas and nays here. All those in favor of motion due pass on LC 393761, please signify by raising your hand. 7 yeas. All those opposed, like sign. Motion carries 7-5. Senator Anavitarte, Senate Resolution 158. I'm going to go ahead and let you present from there, Senator, and we're going to hear about the Northwest Logistics Corridor.
I was trying to get my steps in. So real quick, Senate Resolution 158. If you served on transportation last year in the Senate and the House, this resolution is basically designating counties from Heard County all the way up to Walker County, Dade and Walker County, along the Highway 27 corridor, north and south, and those counties impacted by Interstate 20, Highway 278, basically is with a logistics corridor designation. This designation will support the work we're trying to do in many of these counties, Paulding County, for example, Polk County, that are bedroom communities. And I know myself and my chairman, who's sitting here in the room today, as we continue to fight for industry, and the other senators who signed on to this resolution, looking to find ways to provide economic growth around freight and logistics and other industries to Northwest Georgia. A similar concept was adopted in Southeast Georgia, and I know the Department of Economic Development, including working with Chairman Beach and others, has seen that flourish in terms of job creation and in industry growth. So our hope and expectation is that the industry and product that's moving from the port in Savannah into West Georgia, Northwest Georgia, trying to get to places like Dallas, Texas, St. Louis, Missouri, Nashville, Tennessee, will be captured in our part of the state over the next several years. So, so this is a collaborative effort between all these local communities and elected officials to find a path forward to bring jobs to our part of the state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Anavitarte. Any questions for the author of the bill? Senator Beach.
Move to pass.
We have a motion from Senator Beach, move to pass, and a second from Senator Dixon. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
All right. We are now on to the star of our show. For those of you that were not here, here's what I'm going to endeavor to do. I'm going to ask Senator Goodman, Chairman Goodman, to come forward and maybe spend 3 to 5 minutes, if you will, unpacking your bill. I would remind you that no action will be taken today, and we're going to try to test drive an idea of essentially some guided conversation back and forth, if you will. Commissioner McMurray has agreed to be tribute to represent GDOT. And this is not King of the Hill where we're going to bring different people forward to try to topple the commissioner necessarily, but I understand the side that favors the bill has some different people that will speak on different topics. The topics that I have highlighted for us to discuss, I hope we can get to all of them. We'll start with a discussion of federal law in neighboring states. We'll then move on to topic number 2, which will be pavement degradation and bridge impact. Topic number 3 will be safety. And topic number 4 will be the economic impact or economic opportunity and or how many trucks will be on the road or less trucks as a result of this bill should it pass. I think that that's all we're going to have time to get to today. And so when Senator Goodman's done presenting his bill, we're going to move straight into that dialogue back and forth and let you take it from there, Mr. Senator Goodman, Senate Bill 165.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Colleagues, I just want to start out by sharing a few stories of Georgia that some of you may know. Kim Woodard of Evergreen Timber in Cuthbert, Georgia, harvests timber in Georgia that is hauled to mills in West Georgia and Alabama. When hauling timber to West Rocks Pulp Mill in Cottonton, Alabama, just 4 miles from the Georgia border, Miss Woodard's trucks were 4,000 pounds lighter than her Alabama competitors who can haul legally at 88,000 pounds. Under SB 165, Miss Woodard could save $48 a trip while also taking one truck off the road every 13 trips. Here's a conservative and very real number for you to consider. If Miss Woodard is hauling 50 loads a week, a savings of $48 per trip would have an annual savings of $125,000. I run a small business, and I can tell you that's real money. Another story, Georgia grows more Bermuda grass cultivars for lawns and sports fields than our neighboring states. That means Florida projects often purchase grass from Georgia farmers. For example, a golf course being built in Ocala, Florida needed 30 acres of Tiff-Tuff Bermuda grass and purchased from a Supersod farm in Fort Valley, Georgia. For Supersod to complete this order, it will take an estimated 130 trucks loaded at 80 to 84,000 pounds in order to deliver that sod 265 miles away. If the truck variance was increased to allow up to 90,000 pounds, they could add more grass on each load, reduce the number of truck trips needed by at least 13. That would save a minimum of 6,890 miles on state highways at a cost of $5.50 per mile. That would reduce the cost of shipping by $37,895 just for this one project. Another story, Fielddale Farms is a 50-year-old family-owned poultry company headquartered in northeast Georgia. This poultry producer operates feed production and processing facilities in Georgia, but 57 of the small family farms that they deliver to and from are in South Carolina, which allows 90,000-pound loads serving farms with feed and poultry loads. When Fielddale delivers to these farms in South Carolina, they must adhere to the lower Georgia weight limits, which places the company at a significant competitive disadvantage compared to poultry companies operating within South Carolina. For Fielddale, this means 11,000 delivery trips one way and 11,000 empty trips in the other direction. Based on a conservative 10% trip reduction, which SB 165 would make possible, it is estimated that this Georgia employer could cut 143,000 miles traveled every year. This translates to an annual savings of $429,000. However, this doesn't even account for the much larger savings that the Fielddale would recognize when serving the majority of their farms, which are located in Georgia. Another story, y'all, is the Cobber Company that my family owns. You know, we buy our peaches from Ridge Springs, South Carolina. That's Titan Foods. We buy about 500,000 pounds of peaches a year. When they load up in Ridge Springs, South Carolina, they can haul 90,000 pounds for 25 miles until they get to the Georgia line, and they can only haul 84,000 pounds.
Senator, can I go ahead and ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
Can you outline for us maybe what the bill does and what the sub
Absolutely.
and what the sub does and how it's changed from maybe the previous version that some
Sure.
of us have read?
Yeah, the committee substitute before you will put Georgia's businesses and consumers on a level playing field with our surrounding states to ensure that our businesses are competitive and our state is positioned for future growth. If you want, I know that when we got, in interest of time, I will just say this. We're looking at 40-year high inflation, $8 eggs. When you look at the disparity, when we're at with truck weights, in Florida it's 88,000 pounds, in Alabama it's 88,000 pounds, in Tennessee it's 88,000 pounds, and in North Carolina and South Carolina it's 90,000 pounds. At the end of the day, the consumer is who's paying the cost of this. Not only that, when we have container ships that are coming from China, that are coming into our ports, if they're unsealed, they can haul at 100,000 pounds. Now, if you or I, if we went into a business building widgets, the only competitive advantage that we have over our Chinese competitors is that they're 6,000 miles away. So we're going to allow them to haul at 100,000 pounds in our infrastructure when we can only haul 84. We negate the only advantage that we have when you look at the advantages they have in labor costs and regulations and everything else. So in interest of time, I know y'all, I've got plenty I could say about it, but let me just say this, Mr. Chairman. If you look at line 20, we add hauling intermediate and finished forest products. Line 22, we add agricultural inputs. Again, when you look at where we're at with inflation. Line 31, we've included hauling floor coverings or synthetic turfs for processing or distribution, which is supporting our manufacturing jobs all over the state. We're the carpet capital of the world, and we support our industry friends. Line 32, we include hauling petroleum-based gasoline or diesel fuel for distribution. We all know that diesel fuel is $4.75 a gallon. It costs money to get it to the station. Having experienced extreme gas prices over recent years, I believe it is in the best interest of all Georgians to ensure fuel remains affordable. We just recently experienced extreme gas prices, and our governor and legislator saw fit to suspend the motor fuel tax for almost a full year. We strike lines 34 and 35. This supports the independent truck drivers in many of your districts, like those in my good friend Senator David Lucas's region. Lines 38 and 39, we add agricultural finished goods for distribution or retail for consumer purchase. Line 40 raises the variance from 5% to 12.5%. Line 41 extends the mile radius to 150 miles to mirror the federal MAP-21 allowable distance. Line 41 and 42 include safety language to ensure that vehicle equipment is certified to meet or exceed the weight allowable with the variance. Mr. Chairman.
All right. So if I could maybe try to make sure I understand this correctly. The original version of this bill allowed for an allotment of increases of truck weights from 80,000 pounds to 90,000 pounds for all trucks. Mm-hmm. You've now limited it to granite trucks, solid waste trucks, petroleum trucks, poultry, those that are listed here, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And can you tell me what lines 34 to 35 do functionally?
Sure. And, Mr. Chairman, for instance, I have a good friend that's in the road building business in your county. When he builds roads, he has the drop-down axle, basically. And so the drop-down axle, it allows that axle to be considered in terms of the weight per axle, so that it can be entered into the formula for what they can haul. And that also affects, by the way, I mean, we're all paying for our roads, we're all paying for our infrastructure, and so that should result in savings to Georgia taxpayers as well.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Goodman. I think that we all have a high-level view of what we are dealing with here. I want to take about the next 30 minutes, and I'm going to cap it at that, the next 30 minutes, and discuss some of the pros and cons of this and allow the two sides, if you will, to take part in a discussion. I'm going to have you hang on, please, Senator. So I'm going to ask Russell McMurray to come forward, if you will. And then Frank Morris, I'm not sure who you would like to come up alongside Russell for this initial topic. The initial topic is we're going to talk about federal law as it relates to surrounding states. We heard Chairman Goodman speak to this some. And obviously we know we want to remain the #1 state to do business. We know that we want to have competitive advantages. We also want to make sure we have a clear picture on what it means to compare us to the neighboring states. So whoever would like to sit alongside Commissioner Murray. It's Andre.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. So I think probably the most fair way to do this is to give each of you 3 minutes. And then we'll give the committee the opportunity to ask questions at the conclusion of that time. Senator Gain, did you have something that was pressing or should you want to ask questions of these gentlemen in a minute?
I've got to present a little testimony as well.
Okay. We'll find a time to do that, but in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and start this process. All right. Gentlemen, I know that each of you guys are on separate sides of this particular issue. I also know each of you guys are on the same side of other issues. So I'm going to ask you to be respectful of each other. I know that you would be, even if I didn't ask you of that, but I want to go ahead and ask that. But I'm going to start with Commissioner McMurray, and would like you to address the topic of federal law as it relates to weights and what surrounding states are doing and what that means to you as far as your either support or what I assume is opposition to this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll start with a point of privilege that we're just here to talk about what this SB 165 and the sub, which we just got before coming in here, does, and what the impacts are on infrastructure. I certainly want to affirm that at the Georgia Department of Transportation, we're laser focused on being the #1 state in which to do business. And all these different commodities listed are important to our economy. So I just want to make sure I start with that. But we'll talk about the impacts to infrastructure in the limited time we have. You're getting a handout, and quite frankly, whether it was the original SB 165 or the sub, there's no difference to the impact to Georgia's road and bridges for a 12.5% variance on 80,000 pounds, as you just heard Senator Goodman talk about. So the 90,000 pounds has an impact of bridges requiring us to basically restrict travel or post. When we say post, is putting up a sign that says what the weight restrictions are for trucks and the different styles of trucks to go across bridges. So we would basically double the number of restricted bridges in the state. There's 1,404 bridges today that are restricted. This will add another 1,408 bridges to be restricted. So that is the impact, and the reason why is it that we have to restrict those? Well, bridges are designed to carry certain truck weights.
Commissioner, bridges is going to be our next topic.
Okay.
Can you talk to us about surrounding states and federal
yes,
law?
sir. Surrounding states, if you've got a handout, you may want to look at page 26 as a breakdown of other states. Every state law around us in the southeast is 80,000 pounds. Now, there are variances and permits in each state. So this notion of that we all were behind is not exactly accurate, because every state is 80,000 pounds. That is the federal weight limit on interstates. And I remind you that the interstates are the most highly designed and maintained roads in this nation and in this state, and they're limited to 80,000 pounds with enforcement, with weigh stations along the interstate. So this bill will not allow 90,000 or anything over 80,000 to go on interstates, which then will encourage more trucks to take non-interstates so they can haul heavier, which then is affecting county roads and city streets. And I might add that I'm sitting in the chair, but I believe that ACCG and GMA are fully behind us on this, as they've previously have testified in other committees. So that is the impact, Mr. Chairman. And that's the other states, especially the 90,000 pound states that do allow certain commodities to be exempted. And I would say that what SB 165 is has a lot more exemptions than the other states based on our research. At 90,000 pounds, it requires a special permit, not just carte blanche, and you can go drive anywhere.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Andre.
Thank you very much. My name is Andres Villegas. I head up the Georgia Forestry Association, and I am and today I'm speaking on behalf of the Coalition for a Competitive Georgia. For us, this is an issue on the federal side, specifically to this issue, is really competitiveness. Today, we are dealing with high insurance rates, high fuel costs, and a variety and labor issues that you already heard about today earlier, and we applaud the work of this body to try and address some of those issues. When we look at the map here that we've provided, you'll see this in a green header here, Senate Bill 165. You'll see that these are the variances that are granted to other states around us. So when companies in South Carolina, small business owners and large owners, are trying to deal with these high fuel costs, these high insurance costs, these other competitive factors that are weighing on their business today, they have an advantage over us. There is a reason that our governor signed an executive order that's been renewed 32 times over a 36-month period, because he knew it would work. And because it's proven in other states around us. All we have to look at is why these states have been doing this. Alabama has been at 88,000 pounds for 20 years. Every state around us has a higher weight when it comes to hauling forest products and a lot of these other natural ag and forest products that are out there. Why can't we do it? Is one of the core questions that we always ask ourselves. Also for us, we are only going to grow in terms of a state economically. So we have to get ready. Do we want to put even more pressure on our ability to move products around our state? A key part of this too is routes. The commissioner very correctly stated that there are federal interstates where a lot of our trucks cannot haul above 80,000 pounds, and so that puts our trucks today on these state routes and state and U.S. routes, U.S. highways. Well, in my industry, about 95% of the time that a log truck is on the road, it's on a state or U.S. highway. Only about 5% is on local roads, and that's data that came from the University of Georgia from several studies that they did a few years ago. And so for us, it's the interstates don't figure into this for the forestry industry, because we need to be able to operate at these higher weights, and that forces us onto these local roads.
Great, thank you. I have a question, and I'm going to see if the committee has any on this topic specifically. I want to clarify the federal piece, Commissioner. Federal is 80,000 pounds on all interstates. What's the variance that's allowed?
0 on interstates.
Okay. So I guess a follow-up for you, Mr. Villegas, would be, how does that play into this equation for you and your coalition?
Yeah, today for us, interstates aren't really part of the equation. If we're on an interstate, we're at 80,000 pounds or below, and that doesn't matter what you're carrying. There are certain products, cattle, other products that have to go much further, and for them, they make that business decision to get on the interstate at the lower weights that they can be at.
Senator Beach.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, I want to, on this sheet right here, where it says will increase pavement damage by 60%, shorten pavement life 40%, meaning 20 years will go to 12 years.
Chairman, we're going to do a whole section on pavements. We're just not there yet. So we're
Okay.
going to focus this section of conversation around surrounding states and federal law.
Okay, sorry.
And we're just going to try to stick to that, but we will get to that, and I'll call on you first.
Thank you.
Any other questions relative to surrounding states? Chairman Gooch, or Leader Gooch.
If I could get Commissioner McMurray to look at the map, that's, I guess it's GFA. I don't know if that's your map or theirs.
We didn't make that one. No,
Can
sir.
someone explain what the percentages are for each state?
So those percentages of that are the percentages of bridges in poor and fair condition. So You can see that increased weights by variance or permit around us do exist, but you can look at Georgia on that map, I believe is 25% poor and fair. The others are the relations. The other states have much higher, 50, 60% poor and fair conditions of the bridges. And so there is a direct correlation to pavement damage and bridge damage due to increased weights. And I know we're not ready to talk about that yet, so
Well, we're going to transition to that next. I'm going to actually, Andre, are you going to speak to pavements and bridges, or
No,
is there
sir.
someone else?
We'll have someone else
Great.
from
So
Georgia
we'll
Tech.
transition to the next presenter from your team. And while that person is stepping forward, I'm going to go ahead and let Commissioner McMurray start our next topic, which is going to be around either, both pavement degradation and bridges, and the posting that you started to get to as well.
thanks. I didn't realize this was Stump the Chump, but I'll give it my best go.
It's
So as it relates to bridges, bridges are designed for certain weight classifications of vehicles. In fact, over half or 50% or greater of the county roads and city street bridges were designed for a 30,000-pound truck. Think of a 2-axle box truck. That's what they're designed at.
Can you say that statistic again? What?
Over 50% of local roads are designed for 30,000 pounds. GDOT has a highest percentage designed for 80,000 pounds, not 82, 72,000 to 80,000 pounds. And you can see this on slide, I think I'll have to figure out what slide it is. I know you don't want to do a page turn. So the fact of the matter is bridges are not designed for 90,000. 98% of Georgia bridges, be either state or locally owned, are designed for 80,000 or less. And so as we look at bridge conditions, we're required by the federal government to inspect bridges every 2 years to give them a condition health index score. And this is an engineering analysis, a very thorough evaluation of the bridge. So you take the bridge design, what it was designed to carry, and then it's like sort of like our health checkups. We all have our health issues, and so then the weight that the bridge can hold is reduced based on the conditions of the bridges. And I refer back to what Leader Gooch asked about. You look at the conditions of the bridges in surrounding states, much worse than Georgia's. We're very proud of the investments we've made and where we are with these bridges. So that gives you the health of the bridge or what the bridge can hold. And so the analysis of 90,000, because a 12.5% variance becomes a de facto maximum gross vehicle weight and maximum axle load for bridges. That's why that map looks the way it looks. As it relates to pavement damage, let me start by saying GDOT roads, state highways, and U.S. routes are actually designed. We actually designed those for a 20-year life. And city and county roads, most all of them, especially in rural Georgia, were not designed. They were dirt roads that got some tar and gravel, and they got paved over the decades a couple of times. So they're not even really designed, if you think about that. And you all probably can think about where those local roads are in your districts. So as it relates to pavement damage, there's pavement design formulas and methodology. And there's something called the fourth power rule that basically it's not a linear relationship from an 18,000 pound axle or 23,000 or now a 51,000 pound tandem axle to pavement damage is an exponent of 4. So that's where you get a 20-year to 12-year pavement life. And so it's greatly reduced if the pavement's designed. But again, cities and counties have sort of 6 times more roads than we do. And so the impact of cities and counties is much greater, and there's certainly an increased cost with that. But I do want to go back to this notion that we heard too, that more weight equals less trips, and maybe we'll talk about that later because
It's topic number 4.
Okay, I'm sorry I didn't write down your topic numbers.
You're good. Sir, could you state your name and
Yes.
speak to the topic at hand is degradation of roads, posting of bridges,
Yes.
basically our infrastructure that we're all investing
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Mike Giles. I'm president of the Georgia Poultry Federation. I'm going to speak to bridges, and then Dr. Alex Sander Samoyev is here from GTRI who can speak to pavement degradation. I'm not going to make a technical argument about bridges. Those of you who know me probably aren't surprised by that, but the argument is based on common sense and logic. The fact that the department is prepared to immediately post 1,408 bridges presumably means that the evaluations have been done, and it's been based on the last biennial evaluation, which includes, as the commissioner was saying, and a consideration of over 320 design elements in the bridge. So that, if it's based on the last biennial evaluation, that means that the bridges that are not posted currently have been determined under current law to be safe at 84,000 pounds. Now, we understand that there will be that bridges age and conditions change, and there will be future evaluations, but in the absence of new information, these bridges are likely to be posted at 84,000. So therefore, it does not mean that we're necessarily going to be driving extra miles to go around, or that there'll be parts of the state closed off. Businesses will just simply have to make a decision. Do we want to kind of, in effect, operate under the old law at 84,000 pounds, or does it make sense to load at 90 and then go around that bridge? The way we see it, the actual effect, once these bridges are posted, presumably at 84,000 pounds, or it could be between 84 and 90, depending on that bridge evaluation, then it will be just like it was before. The bridge will be protected, and our people will decide whether or not to go around the bridge or load lower.
Commissioner, what weight will you post the bridges at?
So right now, they are done the analysis for Georgia law, so it does look at if it can hold 84,000. And that if it doesn't, or if it's even below that, a lot of bridges are posted even below that because they weren't designed for that originally, then they're posted. But let me go back to this, what I said, 98% of bridges were designed for 80,000 pounds or less. And again, over 50% on the county roads was 30,000 pounds or less. And how is it that we don't have every bridge posted? So a good engineer, and I'm an engineer, so I don't talk about them, our glass of water is not half full or half empty. It's got a factor of safety of 1 on it because our glass is half full. So bridges are designed with factors of safety. So at 84,000 pounds, you're eating into a factor of safety for a bridge. Again, based on design and based on condition. At 90,000 pounds, you've just, again, 12.5% more impact of eating away a future factor of safety. So I hear what the gentleman is saying, but I disagree with that mentality that the bridges are going to be posted eventually anyway. They will deteriorate a lot faster at 90,000, and they will be posted faster because more of them will wear down quicker. We will have to post immediately, and it is based on the current biennial. We inspect bridges every day. If I run this report tomorrow, it may be a little different. Probably another bridge or two added, not removed.
Mr. Giles, you said you had somebody that was going to speak to pavements
Yes,
from
sir.
your team. We'll
Yes.
ask that person, and you've got about 1 minute, sir. If you could state your name for us, and the board is lighting up on this topic, so we're going to take a couple questions. First, starting with Senator Beach.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Alex Samelov. I'm Principal Research Scientist with Georgia Tech Research Institute, Aerospace, Transportation, and Advanced System Labs. And I am a civil engineer by training. My PhD is from Georgia Tech, and transportation planning was my concentration in my studies. We were asked to look at what type of effect on business operations and on pavement degradation will that increase in weights will have from a poultry standpoint. So everything that I'm going to be talking about today is related to poultry industry.
You've got about 45 seconds to talk about it, sir.
I can do it in 44 seconds.
Perfect.
Forced power rule was one method that we used. If we increase weight from 84,000 pounds to 90,000 pounds, we get about 32% more damage on the road. However, forced power rule has its shortcomings. It does not consider type of a pavement, as Commission mentioned. There are different types of pavements. It does not take into account how many vehicles are moving through this certain roadways. So what we used, we used equivalent single axle loads. And we took typical poultry facility, which is a poultry plant, which receives about 70 trucks on the road. 70 trucks come into that poultry facility every day. We looked at differences between 84,000 pounds and 90,000 pounds. And I don't have time to explain numbers, but basically that would create 1 more year of damage for that particular facility.
I want to make sure I understood what you were saying. You're saying that because of the reduced number of trucks on the road, your position, your study states that actually if the law were changed, there would be less degradation of the roads due to there being less
No.
vehicle miles traveled? Okay.
Let me restate
My
that.
apologies.
So actually, if we take 70 trucks on the road, moving at 84,000 pounds, versus 70 trucks coming to poultry facility at 90,000 pounds, it will create more degradation. So road degrade 1 year faster than 20-year designed life
Okay.
cycle.
So whereas the commissioners had an 8-year increase from going from 20-year life to 12-year life between repaving, you're saying you believe it's from 20 to 19?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And once again, to clarify, this is just for poultry trips coming to poultry facilities such as poultry processing plant.
Great, thank you. Chairman Beach.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, on this, where it says a 20-year pavement life will be reduced to a 12-year pavement life, would it be your conclusion that when we go to EV trucks, which are much heavier, before you put any product on them, that would even maybe take that to a 10-year life? Because those fleets, from what I understand, the EV trucks are much, much heavier than the gas-powered trucks that are going on the road now. So, and then I worry about our motor fuel dollars going down. I know you're going to address that in your EV bill hopefully soon, how we're going to pay for our capital projects, but I worry about those heavier trucks, and they're all going EV. The Amazon's doing it, and then all the big 18-wheelers also.
It just more weight in general. Again, infrastructure just wasn't designed for these loads. Again, bridges, the portfolio, and 38% of our bridges are over 50 years old. Most bridges were designed for a 50-year lifespan, especially city-county bridges. So the largest portion are old. As it relates to more load and more axle weight, and the 12.5% variance on a single axle in a tandem as an SB 165 is far greater than any other surrounding state as well. You got gross vehicle weight, which is the weight of the vehicle. Then the axle, how much load goes on those axles is much greater, and so and I'm not sure what they did, what Georgia Tech did with their axle loading at 12.5% variance, which gets you over 51,000 pounds on a tandem axle, has different impacts on pavement. So. To the point is that's one commodity. This has lots of commodities in the bill, and it can drive anywhere. In my experience growing up in Hart and Franklin County, where we had a lot of chicken houses, and I had a lot of friends with chicken houses, those were not on state highways. Those are on local county roads. The processing plant usually is off a major thoroughfare, but you're on a county road a good bit to get the chickens in and out.
Senator Lucas.
Commissioner, can somebody, you or somebody tell me, what was the governor's rationale in doing it? I mean, we talking about it now because it expired March 11th. What was the rationale? I mean, the governor had to have some rationale in order to give an executive order to do it.
Well, thank you, Senator Lucas. I can't speak for the governor. Obviously, when COVID hit, the world was upside down. Trucking, a lot of states penalized truckers by closing rest stops, which Georgia didn't. There's a huge emphasis on supply chain, and if you recall, everybody's worried about where they're finding toilet paper, so it's a big focus there. I can't speak for the continuance, but they're in the slide. Let me give you some relevance to that, because in the slide deck, there is actually how many permits have been issued for almost the 3 years now. I'll try to find that slide number to tell you what that is, but say again. 21 gives you some idea of actually on slide 10, on slide 10, you can see that there's been 10,365 permits issued for the 95,000 executive order, and I remind you that every time the executive order was renewed, they have to get a new permit. When you get a permit, you get a map that shows that you can't drive across these bridges at 95,000 pounds. It tells you where you cannot drive. So you get a map for that. And so I'll just show you under MCCD says there's over 39 million trips on the interstate that goes through the scales to give you some perspective about this is a very small percentage of trucks on the roadway that actually got the executive order, Senator. So it's a very small percentage of all the trucks on the road at 10,000 permits over 3 years.
Senator Still.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is our, two-part question. First part, what is our truck max variance? I keep hearing about 100,000 pounds coming out of the port. What percentage of trucks are hauling that heavy weight?
So that is less than 0.1%. On slide 10, there's 9,539 permits issued last year to haul 100,000 pounds, and there were 39 million trips across the scale. So it's 0.1% or less hauling 100,000 pounds on the interstate. And I might add that that's two ways. So that's a container coming in that it's non-divisible, it hadn't been broken, it's going to a point where then the container's open. But a Georgia manufacturer can do the same thing. If they're exporting, they can put 100,000 in a container and send it to the port. It allows both ways. That's a federal highway rule. That is not federal law. That is rule that they allow for that to happen.
Okay, then the second part is what percentage of trucks were affected by the increased variance during COVID with that?
The percent would be tiny.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, again, there was only 10,365 permits issued for the executive order over 3 years. And listen, you have 10,000 trucks on your roads on a daily basis.
So then I guess the question to wrap those two up is, with the 32 months that we were running, albeit a small percentage, has there been any measurable damage to any roads or bridges in that 32-month period for the trucks that were overweight for almost 3 years?
It's hard to determine. Hard to determine.
Chairman Gannon.
Because again, you'd have to go map exactly where everybody drove and have a before and after analysis and trust that they drove the map that they were supposed to drive.
Chairman Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did this sheet get around to everybody? You would pass it on around?
I think we all got it.
If you would look over here on the left-hand side of the sheet, this is an actual citation that I received this past year. Said from one of our DMVS guys, said if you'll notice that when I circled right there, this truck was a truckload of logs hauling into Macon. It was 130,100 pounds. I want to help my guys in the poultry, the logging business. I want to help our businesses in Georgia be competitive to other states. I want to see us move this legislation to a 10% variance, 88,000 pounds, so that we're competitive to states around us. But what we have to do is stop stupid. I'm going to ask from one of my friends, Kathleen Bowen, to come over here from ACCG. And I think everybody in here realizes, you know, when you were a kid, you walked across a 2x4, you walked across a 2x6, and you saw it deflect a little bit, right? And as you got a little bit bigger, it deflected a little bit more. And it got a little bit bigger, and what happened? Would you push down on this for me? Oh my gosh, look at what happens. For me, I want you to understand, pavement and bridges are two things that when you overload them, you get to a point of failure. This is where we don't have bridges very often in our United States fail. It does happen. Pavement is the same thing. When you're going across pavement, sitting out here, and you're loading that pavement, it goes to failure. For me, if we allow the super overweight trucks to get on our roads, we're going to kill all our roads, and we probably will kill more people, because the trucks, when you load them with logs, they get heavier, they get top heavy.
Thank you, Chairman.
What I want everybody in here to work on is, I'm for the bill to increase the weights, but I got to stop stupid, and there's an easy way to do that. What we need to do is, instead of this Mickey Mouse 15 cents a pound when you get over 100,000 pounds, hey, all that money that's going into that plant, whatever it be, a processing plant, wood yard, whatever, all that money that would have been paid to that person that's hauling the overweight stuff, take that money and put it in a DOT fund. I'll promise you'll never have the guy come back in the second day when he's overweight. He gets over that magic number, whether you make that magic number 95,000 pounds or 100,000 pounds, that's where you cut it off.
Thank you, Chairman. We've got
price per pound, but
we've got some more folks that have questions. We have some more folks that have questions for our presenters. I want to make sure we honor the time that we have committed to for the committee. Thank you for sharing. Senator Moore. Chairman Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question to either engineer at the table. Has there been any studies when it comes to extra axles? Like we've talked about 18-wheelers, but what about when you have a 22-wheeler or 26-wheeler?
So axles on bridges don't really matter because if there's a federal bridge formula that's in your packet there, it's based on the number of axles and the spacing. So a heavier, shorter truck does more damage to a bridge. Now on pavements, and it depends on, there's two types of pavement designs, rigid and flexible. Axles on pavements can provide a benefit because you're able to disperse the load over more wheels and more axles. That is a benefit, but to the bridge it doesn't matter. In fact, it's worse. Having an extra axle on a dump truck or a short truck, feed truck, what have you, doesn't make a difference because a longer truck is better for a bridge, especially because the load is distributed among the different parts of the bridge. The shorter the truck, the worse for a bridge. There's a little graphic in there. It shows the bridge deflecting like Chairman Ginn's ruler does.
Did you want to add anything?
No, I certainly agree.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Well, one follow-up, and then we're running out of time, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Commissioner, when you talk about these bridges being designed from the past, weren't they designed for a lot shorter trucks too, instead of the longer trucks that we have today? Like, you know, now we went from 48-foot trailers to 53-foot trailers, so haven't trucks gotten longer?
Yes, they have, but they've gotten heavier too. So it's a length and weight. If you look at the federal bridge formula, has length of truck, length of spacing between axles, and number of axles. So.
Thank you, Chairman Moore. Senator Mello. Thank you. Can you pull your mic to you, Senator? Is it working?
It's working.
I don't think it.
I hear you.
You got it.
All right, good. Commissioner, thank you for coming today. My question is, how are we building roads and bridges today? To what specification are we building roads and bridges? Certainly when we were building them 20 years ago in this life cycle, we didn't imagine having this much weight. E-commerce wasn't a thing. Container ships coming through the port, we weren't number 2 in the U.S. at that time. So how are we building roads and bridges today? Have we changed technology? Are we moving away from pavement to asphalt? What are we doing with the technology available to build better roads and bridges?
So as we replace bridges, and I'm speaking for GDOT now, only for state highways and U.S. routes and interstates as well, we do design such that 100,000 pounds may be accommodated. But again, right now that's 2% of the portfolio of all bridges. Cities and counties can design them for what they want, and oftentimes counties especially will not design for the higher standard. They'll still design for 50 to 80,000 pounds just because they just don't expect that kind of weight on rural county roads generally. So it's up to each city and county of what they specify. There's different design levels that bridge engineers can choose from. And as it relates to pavements, pavements are really a function, and Doctor will agree with me, a function of equivalent single axle loadings of how many paths an axle will make on a road. So that has a functionality of traffic, as he testified, is on the volume of roads. So as we do traffic projections, and I might add too that this is a great time to add, is that we don't forecast any of the commodities in SB 165 being reduced as Georgia's population and economy continues to grow. In fact, we expect tonnage of freight to move on Georgia roadways to almost double by the year 2050.
Is this the part where you ask for more money?
Pardon?
Is this the part where you ask for more money? We're with you.
Hands out.
We're with you. I have one last question for the professor. Then I'm going to ask Senator Goodman to step forward and finish. Commissioner, thank you for being here. We only were able to get to 2 of the 4 topics. This will be a to be continued, maybe over the course of a few separate meetings. We'll make sure that we get to people that signed up to speak today that obviously this format did not allow for. But you mentioned Professor or Doctor. I'm not sure if are you a professor?
No,
You had a lot of qualifications. I lost track of all of them. You're smarter than me. You mentioned poultry. Is there any reason to believe that any truck would be different, or essentially when it comes to weight, is a truck relative to, as long as the weight's distributed evenly, then everything's the same? I assume that's the case, but can you correct me if I'm wrong on that?
Can you restate the question?
The fact that it was a poultry truck is irrelevant. Is that correct? It's more so the weight of the truck.
It doesn't matter. It's
Okay.
weight that it matters.
Great. Okay. Excellent. Thank you for being here as well.
Mr. Chairman, you said
Sure.
weight distributed evenly, though. That's not always the case.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep. All right, we're going to call Senator Goodman back up, give you a few minutes to speak to your bill. We're not taking action on this today. I like watching the House fight over things, so we're going to let the House continue to spill blood over there, and we'll see kind of the way the form that this takes. And
Well,
as
thank you.
as they refine the legislation over there, we'll see what happens.
Well, thank you for allowing, for hearing this bill. For me, this bill, we have 28 Senate co-sponsors along with myself. That's 29 votes. That's enough to pass this bill in the Senate. But for me, for 3 years, we've been I'm starting to sound like my good friend Senator again.
But Leader Gooch was the second signer on a bill one time that he voted against, so I wouldn't be so sure that translates all the way through to the board.
Touche, but I will say this. We all agree on this. I think that government doesn't pay for these bridges, that the people of Georgia do, right? And for 3 years, we've been operating at 95,000 pounds with 40-year high inflation. We all know what it's like when you go to the grocery store. At the end of the day, the people of Georgia are having to pay for it. And to Senator Beach's point, we're going to have to invest more in our roads and our infrastructure with these battery trucks coming online and everything else. But hopefully, at the end of the day, the consumers who's paying the cost for this, hopefully if we can give them some help and give this trucking cost some help, like our cobbler company, it costs us 66 cents per 2-pound cobbler to get it to the distribution center, and that's before we even buy all the raw ingredients coming in. So I would just say that we're going to have to invest more in infrastructure, but if we could get our weights, our variances up to being comparable with the states that are surrounding us, if we're going to have to end up asking the people of Georgia for more money to invest in freight and logistics, that we can give them some help and get them competitive with other states around them, because they're the ones that are paying the cost at the grocery store and the gas pump. So.
Thank you, Senator Goodman. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting. We have other folks need to get to other committees. This will be an ongoing conversation for this committee, so we will see you next time.